Welcome to Topic Man, the only podcast you will ever need. 6 of one and Bill of the other. I am joined today by the supreme intellect that is Mr. Bill. Mr. Bill, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you this fine, beautiful Christmas dude's day?
We're going to be talking about Dark today, a Netflix show, German Netflix show, and time travel. Spoilers, but time travel. And I was just saying before we came on air, I don't know why I'm holding my breasts. I was just saying before we came on air that this jumper places me in a moment of time, but today isn't that moment. It's not Christmas. It's not Christmas. My boiler broke. I'm sitting in the freezing cold, so I had to put a very warm jumper on. And this jumper is possibly the nicest jumper I've ever owned. I mean, that doesn't really give any idea of why, but look at the knit, look at the weave, look at the weave, look at the weave.
Wait, just let me ask. So in England, you call sweaters jumpers?
Yes.
Do you like hop up and down when you put them on? Like, why are they?
No, I couldn't tell you. They're called woolly jumpers, but I couldn't tell you why it's a jumper.
That sounds
So what's funny about that? You advised that I watch the Netflix show Dark.
Yes.
Because you said it was one of your favourite programmes ever.
Absolutely.
So, a couple of months ago, I think it feels like a couple of months ago, weeks ago, I watched it pretty much all in one go. And then I forgot all about it until today. So here we are. German, it's probably the most, it's the first time I've ever watched anything in German, I think. German sort of show, a German show. I don't know, unless you can think of another one, like on Netflix, like a popular Netflix streaming series. I mean, but it's the first time I've watched one in German, and you told me to watch it with the subtitles, which I would have done anyway.
Yeah.
But interesting, before we talk about it, so I watched it right through with the subtitles, and then thinking, oh, do you know what? I'll refresh myself because I've now forgotten it all again. I will watch it with the audio, the dub. It is horrific. And when you read comments, because once you've watched Dark, you'll want to read the internet to see what other people thought of it. What you understand from that is that the majority of the population of the Netflix watching Planet Earth watched it with the dub.
No, they didn't.
Every comment I read on Reddit, I could tell they'd watched the dub. So, and it's terrible. I've listened to some good dubs in my time. This is one of the worst.
No, it's really bad. And I think if you watch it, if you're not used to watching subtitles, for about the first half of the first episode, it's a little annoying because the cinematography is beautiful and you want to look at it. But I swear after that, you get into the story and you really do forget you're reading along.
I watch everything with subtitles anyway, due to hearing issues.
Maybe because we're rock and roll guys, I find now, and then I go, oh, I have to say, the Peaky Blinders, I get so much more, even though I feel like the Peaky Blinders, they get to a point every day where he's like, all right, Jimmy, get the bloody blow. And then we're going to go to the bloody blow. Jimmy. And I never understand, like, what, they always do the A-Team plan at the end, like, of the series. And then I never understand specifically what they're doing, like, as he's going through it, but it all works out, and it's still cool. But I have to read, now that I read the subtitles, I'm like, oh, Jimmy was getting the blunderblun. Now I know. Because before I didn't know who was getting the blundy blun. Arthur.
Yeah.
Arthur, get the blundy blun.
I find that I need subtitles on in everything, even stuff that's quite clear, just to understand what's going on. And historically, I've watched so many films with subtitles. I'm so quick at reading. I can read. People criticize them because they say, "Oh, I don't want to be reading all the time." But have you noticed that when you get good at it, that's what she said. When you get good at it, then you can. I can just see that. I can see the whole sentence and just read it instantly.
I picture you at a bar with a lady, and this is like you're like trying to like get her interested, and you're like, reading. I'm the quickest there is.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, sit there and go, hello, Ali, can I buy you a drink? Yeah, do you know what I'm really good at? Reading really quickly.
I'm a physicist. This is the National Space Institute. Oh, yeah? You ever try subtitles? Because I can go through like nobody's business.
Oh, don't make me laugh. I'm so ill today as well, Bill. Let's talk. I thought when I was feeling ill, wearing a really hot jumper, I thought we should talk about the most complicated TV series I think I've ever watched.
I recommended the show. I loved the show. I've watched it twice, and it's been a while. So I went and I did one of those YouTube videos where they go over each season and they do a refresher to refresh myself. And I don't think I could explain point by point the plot to you now if I tried, because Oh, and spoilers, if you're watching this and you want to watch Dark, I would highly recommend it. It is one of my favorite shows ever. But we are going to spoil the crap out of it.
I was going to say that, Bill. I was going to say. Good job you reminded me to say it. That if you take away one thing from this right now, it's that Bill and I both recommend Dark. So go away and watch it before you come back for me to now slag it all off, even though it was really good. So it was really good. All right.
Oh, I will make fun of it too. Don't worry.
So they've gone and watched it. They've now come back. Welcome back into the room. Holy shit, Bill. Dark.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Right, first question.
Okay.
I never watched Lost. Never watched it, right?
Yes.
But I have the feeling that they made it up as they went along, from what I hear, right?
Yes.
Dark. Do you think they had it all planned from the beginning?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's kind of what makes it, one of the things that makes it really good is, as crazy as it gets and it's convoluted as it is, and it certainly is both of those things, you really get the sense that they did plan it all out, that they sat down, they had a plan, we're going to do 3 seasons, there's not a polar bear that shows up and then they don't know what it is at the end. As convoluted as it is, and it gets a bit too convoluted, you can tell that I think the whole thing was mapped out, in my opinion.
Okay. I'd like to think that too. There was moments during season 3 when I thought, I'm not sure anymore. I'm not sure that they actually had this bit planned.
Let's get into the important question. Do you think in another dimension I have bangs?
That's the thing. Well, we'll get onto that. We'll get onto that. The idea of opposites and what they consider to be an opposite and everything.
In the Star Trek universe, I would be evil Bill because I have a goatee.
Yeah. Star Trek and Knight Rider.
Oh yeah,
because Michael Knight, David Hasselhoff, Michael Knight, when he played Garth, all they did was give him a little goatee. It's the thing you do, isn't it? You're right. Now we're into spoiler territory, right? I want to see if I can sum up Dark in a few sentences, right? There's a scientist who has an argument with his son. His son leaves the house and crashes a car and dies. So the scientist makes a time machine and to go back in time to save his son, and he starts the time machine, and as far as he's concerned, it's failed, and that's that, and he carries on with his life. But the time machine creates 2 alternate worlds, and at the end of a lot of fuss and nonsense, the resulting people from the 2 alternate worlds go back to where his son dies, stop him dying. He then drives home, meaning the scientist never knew any of it happened because he never created the time machine, and they carry on their lives completely normally. So nothing happened. It ends with the scientist never invents the time machine because he never needed to, and he doesn't even know that his son ever died. So nothing happened. 3 seasons! 3 seasons! And nothing happened! Nothing happened. End of rant.
You got to think like a scientist and a mathematician. Something did not happen. It's not that nothing happened. It's that something did not happen.
So
that's true. You've got to add quantum into your explanation more. You just got to say quantum a bunch. But so technically yes, but it's like antimatter. It was like something was happening. Anti didn't happen. No, but I think that was very eloquently done for a very convoluted show. But you did map over 2 dimensions of people's full lives as something or other, and then they all faded into fairy dust.
Well, I'll tell you what. Once you try and explain, especially with the parallel universe part in season 3, I'll tell you what. When it started, going back to episode 1, right from the beginning, I thought I didn't know what to expect. I found it. I think I texted you very, very early on. I just said something like, "I'm getting a bit confused because I can't tell the difference between the characters. They all look the same. They're all just like lanky German teenagers, and they were all like, yeah. Those Germans.
Yeah, I know those Germans all look the
How
same.
dare those Germans in this German show? All these Germans. No, no, not because they're German, Bill. Because I can't tell any lanky teenagers apart, even in this country. But these got these school kids.
What's the German word for constipated?
I don't know.
Far from pooping.
Fuck me. The most intellectual show of all time, and we got far from pooping.
Towering intellect.
No, no. I put it on. I watched it, and I thought, oh, this is amazing because it starts. The very first scene, I think, if I remember rightly, someone hangs himself, and they leave a letter. They leave a letter that says, "Do not open until so and so time," and the whole episode revolves around this woman constantly looking at this letter, waiting to open it. And I thought, what an amazing. No, this is good. This is me being. This is good, and this is me. And I'm watching it thinking, this is perfect. What a perfect start, and what a perfect idea for a show where there's a letter, but you don't know what's written in it, but it has to be opened at a certain time. And she doesn't do what we would do, which is just open the bloody thing and read it. She actually waits and waits and waits. And I thought, this is great.
That poor woman had a giant mole on her face, so you could tell the difference between her and the other characters. And I don't feel that you're giving her sacrifice enough.
Do you know what? It took a fair while for me to realise that she was the nurse because, like, okay, right.
She has a huge mole on her face.
No, right. I've got I haven't written any notes. This is annoying, right? I've got about another 3 things to say, but I'm gonna put it over to you.
Because I was looking at the mole, and you
Yeah,
can't tell.
the mole. Moly, mole. That's Austin Powers, isn't it? This show starts off as if it's going to be about missing children,
Yeah.
right? It's not.
What sort of is?
Fucking, it's
There-
not.
there-
It's
There's
not.
like four children to get killed by their parents.
Right. Okay. Right. Couple of things. Right. So it's so complicated to talk about. I never really understood what was going on with the children having metal things strapped around their heads, burning their eyes out, and who and why they were doing it. And am I right in assuming that when the scientist originally invented the time machine that he thinks didn't work. Well, it didn't work. It created 2 parallel worlds instead. That in the parallel worlds, the scientist was still there trying to create a time machine. And that's the time machine.
Yeah, there were what sort of naturally occurring time machines in the caves, and they were trying to recreate.
But that's
it
only as a result of...
control it. Yeah, but you can do
Isn't that as a result of his time machine? Right, so that black goo and stuff in the cave,
Yeah.
that was only there because he split the universe or whatever.
Yeah.
He caused that black goo.
Yes.
Oh, let me be a bit lighter for a second, right? Because someone helped me out with this one. Nearly the first scene of the show, they're in that room. I think it's got like blue paint, a bit like this, what you're wearing, right? And the kid's in the chair, and there's a TV on the wall, and they're trying to say, it's the 80s, it's the 80s. Yeah. So they've got the song, you spin me right round, baby, right round, like a record player, baby, you spin me. And I say to the person who walks into the room...
Like a record player, baby. What
you
making up lyrics here?
So I say to the person who comes in, I say, oh my God, they're starting off straight away, because this is on my rewatch. I said, oh my God, they were saying it in the very first seconds. You spin me right, the idea of secular thing. And she goes, yeah, it's by Dead or Alive as well. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you spin me right round by Dead or Alive. And it's like the first scene of the show. They're saying it all, Dead or Alive. And then by the end, it turns out they do a lot of Schrodinger's cat and stuff. The acting was great. I would single out Ulrich, the bloke who plays the main guy, Ulrich Nielsen.
Is really good at playing an asshole.
Yeah. He was
like,
good.
Well, some of their decision. Let's talk about that. So, like, Hannah cracked me up because Hannah just loved that drama. She's like, "Can I cheat on somebody? Can I?" And like, I was thinking about it. So she goes back in time. There's the '80s, and what is it? The '40s, and then the late 1800s. And
Yeah.
she goes back to the '40s, and she sees the old drunken police officer from her time is there in the 1940s. And she goes, "You know what a good idea would be? I'll sleep with him and get pregnant." And I thought about that because when I first watched, I thought, "Oh, really? Is someone going to be that stupid that they go back in the past?" Because everyone says you go back in the past, the littlest thing that you do can change the future. And she immediately just sleeps with the old cop. And then I thought that's actually perfect now that I rewatched it. Because if you think of someone who loves drama, I totally think I could totally see a girl going in 1940 and going, "I am going to mess up the space-time continuum." Yeah, I just thought that was funny, and I think that that is actually truer to what humans would actually do. You know, you would know that messing with anything would ruin the space-time continuum, and she just instantly does like the worst thing you could possibly do. And along with Ulrich beating that kid with the rock in the head. Um,
But you could see
and
why.
and let's stop because let me ask you this. Because what is your theory? So I don't believe time travel exists as of right now. I don't think we can do it. If we could, so if you went back and killed your mom, do you think you would just fade into fairy dust? Because I am
No.
of the belief that what you would do is you would create then another reality where your mom is dead and you were there, but in the past, and then that would just branch off from there. That maybe you wouldn't be born in that world, but the world that we are in would continue like nothing happened. Without you, obviously, because you'll have to go back in time. Do you want me to say that again, but slower?
No, no, I get it. I get it. I'm not sure. We've all, anyone who's into sort of time travel films, sci-fi films, has always thought about this one. You can have the really bad way of doing it, which is Marty McFly goes back in time and stops his parents kind of getting on with each other, and then he has a photograph that he fades from the bottom up, fades out of.
Like they would make the same photograph, but
Yeah,
just not him.
yeah, and he fades and he's looking at it going, "Oh my god!" And then he starts to, and his arm starts to go, and he's like, "Oh no, oh no, oh no!" And then they kiss, and he's like leaps up with his guitar. It's like it wouldn't happen like that. It
You
wouldn't
don't
happen
think?
like that. I like the idea. I like the idea. Time goes along, and if there's such thing as time travel, you can branch off, and you can go back in time. But this is a different time.
Yes.
So then this one will come up,
Exactly.
which is Back to the Future kind of does that a little bit. But
Yeah.
so if you go back in time and you kill Hitler, then there will then be this timeline where Hitler didn't do what Hitler did. But this
Yeah.
timelines will always still be there. So then you've got parallel universes, haven't you?
Yeah. Yep. And then I mentioned this to you before. There is a theory about that if you were to kill yourself or you were to die, every time that you die, you simply go to another universe where you didn't die, and that keeps happening until there's absolutely no chance for you to stay alive. They talked about it, and there's a show called Devs by the guy that made Ex Machina, and then they also did a little. They did a skit on Alan Wake, the video game. They did a little skit on the TV about that. It's like quantum death or something, where the idea is that you may have died 30 times already, but every time you did, you just went to another universe where you were still there, and that'll keep happening
Right.
until there's absolutely zero chance of you surviving.
I'll tell you what, the Schrodinger's cat thing was interesting. The idea
Yeah.
that the cat. They made a big deal, didn't they?
Why don't you just shake the box? You'd instantly know without opening the box.
Wow!
Solved.
But they talked about it and they said like because people misunderstand it. I think they think that Schrodinger's cat is there's a cat in a box, and you don't know whether it's alive or it's dead until the moment you open the box, and that fixes it as being alive or dead. But they explained it's not that.
Yeah, I think it's called
cat
consciousness
is-
causes collapse.
The
Yeah.
cat is alive and dead. The cat is definitely alive and dead at the same time. Definitely. This is quantum mechanics and stuff, which is really, really hard to get your head around.
I could be wrong. I believe it's called Consciousness Causes Collapse, and they usually you got to it by measuring particles and or waves to see if they would become one or the other, and they would only become what they became when they were. I've got a funny story actually about that. There was I'll say a professor I know. He was an older professor. He was really bright, and you know, I thought I would go up to him when I first learned about this. This is years ago. And he had just given a lecture, and I asked him, I wasn't in this class or anything. I said to him, I go, I've been hearing about this consciousness causes collapse, and it's really interesting. The creative person in me would like to think that it means the universe is just waiting to be observed for it to happen. Or another point of view could be it just goes to show the limits of our ability to be totally, what's what I'm looking for, totally hands off when measuring, totally objective when measuring things. Like, in other words, it shows that we are actually always affecting it even when we're trying to be objective. What do you think of that? And he looked at me and he went, okay, thank you. Have a nice night.
Oh.
This guy's such an idiot. I'm not even going to address this. I'm just going to pretend I can hear it. And,
that story could sum up dark. When someone says to you, so what's dark about them? Because, like I was saying, episode 1 starts where you think it's going to be a mystery about missing children and what happens to them. But pretty soon you realise that it is a convoluted time travel saga, which by season 3, unnecessary in my opinion, introduces the idea of a parallel universe to the point where and then at the very end it introduces like the original universe, so you got 3. But I've got so many questions. They do the bootstrap paradox thing by someone goes back in time with the schematics for a time machine to give to someone to make the time machine, but it turns out that no one ever wrote it. It like the person who made it was brought back in time. He wrote. Can you explain?
You just summed that up perfectly. I think it's interesting because you talked about quantum mechanics. When you listen to quantum mechanics physicists who specialize in it, they all say none of us understand this. And I think that sums it up in that I can explain to you in the show how it worked that he was able to have this and give it back to him and how that loop was created. Not really. But because what I'm saying is the way they did it is you can go through the A to B to C and see the loop, but you really can't understand. Like, you can't really get your head around it, I think. Maybe there's probably someone in the comment that's going to be like, well,
I wish I could. I've read threads on the internet.
Yeah, because even more so,
where they try and explain this stuff,
where the daughter ends up being the mom. And I think Jonas and or is it Jonas and Marta are their own great grandparents.
We'll get onto. I think we need to get onto that.
But that, I think, is the same thing in that you can go and point by point see how well it happened because these people went back in time, and it's chicken or egg. They went back in time, they created themselves, but how did they create themselves when they didn't exist? So you can see the mechanics of it, so you can see that, well, they did exist, and they went back in time after they existed. So they were already, but then how did they exist? In other words, so mechanically we can write down sort of how it happened.
Because
so
with the time machine thing, right? So
yeah,
scientists invent a time machine, right? This silly little box thing that needs a mobile phone for some unexplained reason. They never got that right. So you put a mobile.
You need Sprint
stuff,
to travel
right?
back in time.
So he invents a time machine, and he does the schematics for it. But it turns out that the schematics that he drew are given to him earlier, which is how he makes it.
This is late, but you need emoticons. It takes 3 smiley face emojis to go back in time. That's why you need the phone.
So the time machine bit, that's confusing enough, right? But what gets me much worse than that is the device that they have in the other universe to travel between the 2 universes They don't even explain that at all. He just got this thing, and it just what the hell's that all about? How could they possibly?
Here's where it gets confusing. Didn't they create that when they went back to 1880 and they spent years trying to like perfect the time machine?
Did they? Did they?
I think they got it to a certain point, and then
I'm sure
they
I
made
watched
the
this
chair.
show. I'm sure I
They were
watched it.
sending- That they were sending kids back. They got the chair, and then I think the iteration after the chair. So that's sort of the timeline on how they developed and made it different. But then I get confused because I go, which universe is that? So I
Bill,
get a little.
explain the children again. Why are they kidnapping children and strapping them to chairs and killing them?
Because they think they have to perfect time travel in order to save the universe. So he wants to save the one
Do they?
character, and
Oh,
I have to
right,
look at
okay.
his name. Yeah, the guy who's his
I know all their names. Tell me which one. I'll name him.
okay. He's the mysterious guy that put the kid in the time travel box, and he always hangs out with the dude with the scarred face. Not Yona, old Ona scarred face. The guy that got hit with the rock scarred.
Yeah, so it's
he's the priest,
Doppler. Peter.
priest. Yeah,
Helg. Is the
Helg?
one who gets smashed by Ulrich with a rock and he grows up.
the priest guy that always is with him.
Noah.
Yes, Noah. Now
Noah.
that we got his name, I forgot where I was going with that.
See, no,
Wait. Noah's trying to save his child that got kidnapped in the future by his wife's older self.
yes.
Okay. So he is with Adam, who is actually Jonas, and because this is how confusing the show is, you can't even say like a sentence. Because he wants to get his child back, and they believe the only way to do that is to re-figure out time travel, because I guess they have a limited capacity to do it. So I believe he's using the chairs as a means to relearn time travel. So the time machine in the future that they have wouldn't exist if they didn't figure out how to redo it in the past, I believe.
So
Now, again, I watched a recap, so I have to.
and then Noah's and the daughter that Noah's trying to save is the woman, the policewoman,
No. Oh, yes.
because she's her own, because she
Yeah.
is the daughter of her daughter.
Yes.
Yes, she's the daughter
Exactly.
of her daughter. A few things, right? I've got issues with the parallel universe thing where the one daughter can suddenly hear and the other one can't, and that's considered an opposite.
Bangs. That's my favorite. That she just has bangs.
When I first started watching it, because I didn't know where it was going, but I remember thinking I was calling the Hannah, I think she's called. I was calling her Kim Cattrall because to me she looked like Kim Cattrall. Quite, yeah. What?
That was a little moment there. You having a little
Wait.
moment?
I was. What was I
You literally
about
went,
to say? Oh no! Right. The acting, right now. So this is a program that you realise as it goes along is reliant on different, the same character being portrayed as kind of child, teenager, adult, old person, and the only way that can work,
They did a fantastic job.
it's amazing. It's amazing. So my point is that can fail on so many levels, and it did. It did. It wasn't perfect, but I tell you what, that's the best stab at it I've ever seen, where you can almost just look at them and you can believe it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about Jonas, funnily enough. I think
Yeah.
Ulrich was great. And many of the women just by putting a mole on them or whatever. Jonas.
Jonas.
Not sure about Jonas.
So your future self comes to you, right? And he's horribly burned, and he goes, "Sorry, you're gonna get horribly burned." And then Jonas is like, "Let me work on this time machine without protective equipment." Like, if you notice, older Marta looks fine. She got a scar on her face. I don't
Yeah.
understand why she cut her. The old Marta cut her, but I don't get that. But
That was just so we could tell which one was which.
I think they literally did that. They
Yeah,
gave
that was
people
a sliding doors thing. Well, Gwyneth
Yeah.
Paltrow immediately gets a haircut.
Yeah.
It's like we had to scar one of the Marthas.
And I liked Marta. Marta was my favorite. I was like, yeah.
Right.
And that's funny because I always complain. I always like my thing is I always
Right.
like movies, TV shows with regular looking people because it takes me out of it when everyone is better looking than anyone you've ever met. But I have to admit, I found Marta pretty attractive, and I don't know if I would have liked the show as much
Did
if I didn't think she was
Okay,
neat.
but I can see what the answer to this question is going to be now then, because, right, did you think that the actress who played Marta, could act? Or did you spend 3 whole seasons doing this?
See, that's entrancing to me. I just want to say, how dare you, sir? How dare you desecrate Marta?
If I had notes, my notes would say, all good acting apart from Martha.
Martha was the best part of the damn show to me. Wouldn't Jonas wear protective equipment so you didn't get horribly? Like if you said, "Hey, you're gonna get horribly burned," I would wear like a spacesuit to like boil my macaroni and cheese. I would have like a spacesuit on.
Did they
Just so I didn't,
explain
like,
it? Because
yeah,
you're saying
because
you're saying that his ridiculously scarred face was adequately explained, but I never felt that it was.
well, I mean, you can sort of sum it up, right? I mean, you don't get that way.
Well, why was he?
Just
Why was he so
yeah,
burned up?
smoke cigarettes. Well, because he was working on the time
Everyone else was jumping backwards and forwards like bloody leaping frogs.
They said that he was working on it, and I guess he got like burned by like some kind of like a I don't know if it was a liquid or
Well,
something.
wear a helmet then.
Well, that's my point. My point is, if I knew, I'd be like I said, I'd be cooking macaroni and cheese in the space costume. You know, if you knew that was going to happen. And
Right, this is how stupid I am, right? Because this didn't dawn on me till very late, right? So it splits, right? And in this world you've got Adam, and in this world you've got Eve, right?
I know that
Because for some reason Martha becomes Eve and Jonas becomes Adam, right? And there's a painting on the wall.
You know, I love this show, and I hate how much we're shitting on it, but it's all true.
Right? So you've got Adam and Eve, right? And then they have, I mean, that's in itself, it's just like thrusting it into your face. Adam and Eve. And then they get together, and I think the point, as you can know, I think the point is that an Adam from this world gets together with an Eve from this world,
Yeah.
and they have offspring,
Interdimensional love.
right? So the offspring is so weird because it's the product of 2 worlds that should never have met.
I took it that the offspring is too so weird because they're like aunt and nephew. They're like it's like the same reason people look like that. And no offense if you're watching from.
Let me think about that. Let me think about that.
They're inbred.
So
Because they
Ulrich has a son. Ulrich's son, Mikkel. His son is Jonas,
yeah, it would be like
and
if
he
you
gets
slept
together
with
with Martha, who's also Sassy
His aunt.
Santy.
yeah.
And that does happen all the time around here. So, but no one looks like them.
Well, I mean, if you do it enough though, because if you go back through the timeline, I think that's happened more than a few times.
But right, so did you right? A massive wasted opportunity here, right? So you've got this, and they signposted it very clearly. You got these 3 characters who kind of go through. You got the boy, the man, and the old man with the same scarred face, right? So it's obvious that they're the same person in 3 different pieces of time who travel together and do things together, right? Why?
Well, what do you mean why?
Why? What the was that all about?
So I believe if I'm correct, you wanted me to explain why Jonas and Marta are so important after the guy created the time machine. Is that what your question was?
I suppose ultimately that's my question. It was more of a plot question, really, which is they tried to make these 3 people that were the same person, the offspring, I believe, of Martha and Jonas.
Oh
and they go
yeah,
around
that guy.
killing people.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I read up on it because, like, the first thing you do when you've watched Dark is then go and have a look what other people think. And I saw that the explanation is that they go constantly killing people and making sure that everything happens the same way every time. In a never-ending loop. Why?
Well, I think the biggest question really is the guy with the cleft lip who doesn't talk at all ended up hooking up with Noah's really beautiful sister, and I believe who is their kid?
Yes, that's right. Allegedly, that doesn't make any sense either. Because why?
Wait,
There was lots of talk saying we don't buy that they would have got together. We don't buy it because they were called the Unknown.
Yes, and
the Unknown?
Was their kid Agnes and Nielsen? Trante. I forget who their kid was, but well, the thing is, I'm not trying to hate on people with cleft lips. I'm just saying, usually you have the gift of gab or something else to sort of get you. You're charming. He's a murderous person who doesn't talk. So, like, what?
Yes.
Maybe he wrote down that he's really good at reading subtitles, and that's how he attracted her. Agnes to him.
He went. He went up to her. She recoiled a bit, and he just went, "Hey, I'm a quick reader." And she was like, "Oh, I'm just trying to look. I've got the family tree up."
He said, most people have difficulty keeping up with subtitles, but for me, it's very easy. Doesn't give me problems at all. And she's like, do you want to go get a drink?
I didn't need those three people, the same person, the three people in it. I didn't get it. They didn't do anything.
Maybe if you sit down and do the math, maybe they had to exist to make everything happen. But yeah, I could have lost them, and I don't know that they...
Another bit.
It might have been just in the moment, it's like another mystery. That's why they added it. I don't know. I'm not a detective, okay? But I don't know if I would be like, open up that nuclear waste right now, because I want to look at it. I don't know if that's a good plan. But what I did like, and somebody made this point, it's not my thought, but I thought it was smart. One thing we've been ragging on the show that I enjoy. One thing I like that they did.
It's great.
What was, and I have to look up the names again. What was the name of the woman that's throughout the whole thing? That's the head of the nuclear power plant.
Yeah, that's Claudia Tiedemann.
Yes, I love that.
Tiedemann.
I love that the person that actually figured out how to really solve it.
Yes.
Was someone who was probably had a degree in physics, or it wasn't. Every other show would have the teenager solve it. They'd go to the library and they'd sit around and they'd look at the old newspapers and they'd go, and I like that this show said, no, the person with a degree and that ran a nuclear power plant would probably be the one to figure out over Adam and her, which essentially they probably dropped out of high school. It makes sense that she'd be the one that would actually figure out how to stop it once and for all.
It makes sense, does it? Makes sense, Bill.
What this show does really great is, you're confused and a character comes in that seems to know more than you. And you follow that character because you want to glean what information they have. And then right when you're there on the level with them as the audience, they go, but there's somebody else that knows more than they do. And I think they did a good job. And that kind of gets to a larger point. As you're watching the show, it is an amazing watch as they keep throwing these things at you and solving them. But I did, like I said, for this podcast, I went back to watch a recap, and it really hammers home just how convoluted the plot is, that you get a sense for it's confusing, but I don't think you get quite a sense of how convoluted while you're actually just watching the show from episode to episode, in my opinion.
I don't know.
You just felt like this is ridiculous, or?
I got it. I was confused. I don't think they, like you said, put a mole on a woman, give someone a very distinctive haircut, teenage boy with long hair, teenage boy with short hair. They just didn't do enough for me. They should have color coordinated everybody as well. Like one of the people wears,
like when Breaking Bad goes to Mexico and everything's sepia toned.
Yeah, well, just people wise, they tried it. They did a little bit. Like Jonas wore the yellow anorak a bit, and that was supposed to signify something. But they could have had like every person just wears a color, and I could call them red, blue.
The biggest plot hole in the show, right? So Jonas is in the future, and they almost hang him, and he's hanging out there for days and days. He doesn't take a shower. He can't brush his teeth. He's in a nuclear wasteland, and then, he's in present day, and Marta's in her bathing suit, and she's at the beach, and he goes, I'm gonna go get some smoochy smooch with her, right? So
right.
just imagine yourself. You haven't taken a shower. I don't know how long he was in the future. So you probably haven't taken a shower. Let's say,
Well,
let's be
I haven't
kind.
got any. I haven't got any hot water or heating, so I haven't taken a shower for 5 days.
So he smells like you right now,
Yeah, that's bad.
and he hasn't brushed his teeth. It's 90 degrees outside, and he's wearing a raincoat. Did they make train coats? Like if you're on the train. Anyway, he's wearing a raincoat, buttoned up all the way. He's got a huge scar where he got hanged, And then he's like, you know what? Let's make out. So let's say they hadn't made out before, right? Let's make out when he's smelly, hot, sweaty, has a raincoat and 90 degrees, buttoned up. Like they say, first impressions matter. I would think after that kiss, you'd like, you know what? I kind of had a crush on that guy, but being that he smells like a
And he'd only just
dead
left.
person.
For her,
Yeah.
he'd only just. He walks off and comes back immediately, and he stinks like nuclear waste. And you've got a point. That's not explained.
I mean, you want to talk about plot holes? And then she's like,
The thing is with that was another one. So to signify the difference between the Jonases, you have a moment where he gets hanged. So whenever you see him with the mark, you know that it's that universe. It's they've been quite clever with scars and marks and burns.
I like how they got tired by the third season, so Marta's older self just cuts her face for no reason. Fuck, we're not even gonna just cut her face.
Just cut her face. I got confused because you had, there was moments where it took a little while for me to realise that the older person was the younger person.
It just goes to, I think the what we're talking about this show is summed up with that sentence. It took me a while to realize the older person was the younger person. I think that sums up Dark.
Yeah. A couple more questions then.
Okay, let's go.
What did the nuclear power plant have to do with any of it? If it all boiled down to a scientist inventing a time machine to try to go back in time to save his son?
This is tough, and I haven't rewatched the show, but I think it had to do with the substance that was created by the time machine that was able to create the wormhole was being stored in that nuclear waste. Like it was some kind of a chemical reaction that happens to the nuclear waste that turned it into the stuff that can tear apart the space-time continuum. So they were just storing it there, and when they opened it up, it allowed it. And I don't know if it had a reaction to air or what it was to, open up the wormhole.
Okay. Question number 2. This is quite good. I'm liking that. This is like...
And I could be wrong.
No. We'll say you're right.
I haven't watched this series in years now, so...
People are going to come onto this podcast to hear Bill explain these things, right? So, question number 2.
So if you have a better answer, I'll read the comment.
Question number 2. I was quite happy with the idea that they stumble upon a wormhole in a cave that enables you to travel specifically 33 years, right? And they made a big deal out of this from 2019, whatever, to 1985, whatever the maths is. They made a big deal out of it, right? And then they abandoned it completely by having anyone could walk around with this time machine and put their mobile phone on it and just do something with it, and they time travelled. So you had the wormhole in the cave and you had the time machine. And it wasn't always 33-year intervals.
Right? The wormhole was right by the power plant. So I think...
Yeah, which was underneath... the wormhole was underneath the nuclear power station.
And I think the reason they were killing the kids and what they were working on back in the 1890s or whatever, I think was the port. So they knew that they had the big wormhole liquid glue, and I think they were trying to control it. And then they had the guy's plans. Remember, he'd visit the guy and plan it, so they were experimenting to build it. I'm a little confused. I mean, like I could probably rewatch the whole thing, and I'm sure they explained it a little bit. It gets convoluted, and I tend to just go, okay, I don't really think that, deeply into it.
I was confused by that because it seemed like such a key point of the whole program, the time travel mechanism. And I was quite happy in the beginning that it's this cave. And then Jonas turns up as the stranger, I think, with the time machine. And then you realise that you can actually time travel from anywhere. You don't need to be in the cave. And then the importance of the cave.
But it looks like the little thing is using the same, so that black goo kind of comes up. So it's the same principle. So I took it as whether it was through the original time machine or what's viewed as sort of a natural occurrence of that black goo, then they learned to harness it better so they could freely go without having to go to that specific spot. And that's why they were putting the kids in it, because it's like over time they needed to actually, even though they already knew in the future, they had to go through the motions in the past to develop a way to control the time machine and not have it be sort of out in the wild, as they say.
Okay, I thought the best thing about it overall was the kind of time travel into family stuff. The idea that you go back in time and you then grow up, and then you end up meeting the same people so you end up knowing your dad lives in the house down the road, but he doesn't know who you are. And people going back in time and having daughters who are themselves.
Yeah.
And all of that. And I suppose at the end of the show, at the very end, they have dinner around a table. And I suppose the only people left at that point are the people that had nothing to do with time travel.
Yeah.
Yet, Kim Cattrall glances at a yellow anorak, and has a kind of moment of deja vu.
Is that what they call rain jackets in Britain? Yeah, and I think it was just that it was just that inkling. I can't help it. It was just that inkling of like, I remember 13 dimensions where I cheated on my different husbands.
I thought the stuff between her and Ulrich, the bit where she goes back in time to go and visit him in prison, just to let him know that she was going to let him rot there. She was evil, that character.
You know that old cop you hate? Slept with him.
Yeah.
Like, imagine someone going back in time to sleep with, like, the old person that gives you trouble. Like, that's a level of commitment that
She's committed to being bad. Very strange. When they did the parallel universe thing then, and they had to portray with different versions of the people, I thought that was handled a bit like ham-fistedly.
The guy was missing an eye, then he was missing his arm, and then his eye was just a little down.
I didn't really like that. I just thought I'm not sure I actually liked the parallel universe stuff. Thinking about it now.
I think it goes to show that it's such a fascinating topic, but the reality of it is so complex that if you try to do any kind of narrative thing with it, it very quickly divulges into a soup. Like, we both watch the show. I enjoy the show. And this is one of those things where we read the comments later. I could be wrong with every assumption I've said about this show. And because it's very, very difficult to tell, and I think that's what people appreciate, for as convoluted as it is, the way that they were scarring people, the way that this is the Mercurial number 6, but he has bangs, and to very quickly and visually tell a very complex story in a simple way. So as convoluted as this is, I think they did a pretty good job, because I think in different hands it could be even worse, where you just wouldn't even know what was going on.
Yeah, true. It was very good.
So as hard as it is for us to sit and describe exactly everything, I think if you're watching the show, I got what they were going for, and I got the gist of it as we were going along. Now I have to ask you this: if someone made a point, it's funny, if you went to the past, how much stuff? How would you actually know to tell someone about the future? Like, in other words, you go back to 1890, you're like, no, I'm from the future. We have something called the internet where we can communicate with everyone seamlessly real time. I can speak to someone in England real time. They go, that's fascinating. How do you do that? And I go, I have no idea. And they go, but we have cars that's a combustion engine where we take gasoline and fuel and oil and we turn it into energy and it propels us where you can go much faster than a horse and buggy. How do you do that? No idea.
They'd lock you up.
Like, what could you actually say
They'd
to
lock
them?
they'd lock you up, and the problem is, it kind of happened to the characters because when the kid in the first episode goes back in time, he can't really tell anybody. He tries to. He tells the nurse Agnes, or whatever she's called, in forgotten her name, Moly Mole.
In the future, they have mole removal that you can get at the doc. No.
The nurse, as
Yeah.
the kids, that Michael Carwald, whatever he's called, Mikkel, who
Mads.
becomes Michael.
Mads. Yeah,
No.
Mads.
No, Mads is the other one. Mads is the original one who went missing in 1980,
Oh,
whatever.
you're right. You're right. Yeah, Mikkel.
But Mikkel, as he's growing up in the household with the estranged, with what becomes Jonas's estranged grandma, it's mentioned at one point that she keeps Mikkel drugged up the entire time to push out the talk of time travel and the talk of being from the future. And like Ulrich, when he gets arrested, he can't say. He sits in the jail the entire time. He can't say, I'm from the future and I killed that kid. I tried to kill that kid because I was trying to stop a future event.
I'd be like, hey guys, in 1985, the Bears are going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but there's loads of things. We would go the almanac route, wouldn't we? We would go the Back to the Future route with it. But this is very much not Back to the Future.
Hey, you mind putting that $5 on that Apple stock?
Yeah, that's what we've been doing. I'll tell you what, there was good bits. So just when I was getting confused in each episode, it would end the same way pretty much, with like a song would play, and then you'd have the future, the older version, and the younger version split screen. Looking at doing things. Yeah, and then that was the time. It was almost like the executive person had said, right, can we just, for the idiots, at the end of every episode, just show really blatantly who's who? And I really, really appreciated that, because I'd be like, I thought that was him in the future. And it is. Oh, brilliant. So that worked.
And I don't think it's for the idiots. I think it's a complex show, and you need to do everything in your power to. Because I mean, I have trouble remembering character names and stuff. And I'm not saying I'm some genius. I'm just saying I watched the show all 3 seasons, doing a podcast about it. Watched a recap and have a map that I can look at, and I still go, "Who was that?" Because you have three versions of different characters.
This map.
So it's one thing to go Chandler from Friends, but if Chandler had 2 doppelgangers, they were all douchebags to Keanu Reeves, it would be tough to keep track of.
I liked the music throughout.
Music was great. Cinematography was great.
Cinematography. The music was interesting. In the main song, forever. Yeah, that's it. And ever, forever. Now, interestingly, I loved that, right? Every episode, I loved that. And it felt familiar to me. I loved it. I kept thinking, where's that? Where have I heard that before? And then it turns out, right, there's a program that I hold above all other programs, right? It's Breaking Bad, right? I'm currently rewatching it again for the 8th time, right? Now, I can't really say, I won't do a spoiler. There's a moment in the middle of Breaking Bad, halfway through Breaking Bad, when one of the main characters has a really an epic moment, and it's that music playing.
Really?
It's in Breaking Bad, and it's during the most climactic moment in the whole of Breaking Bad, and it's that music.
Give me some kind of hint. That's not a spoiler, so I know what scene.
It's when. Stop listening now, people who haven't watched Breaking Bad. It's
Who
when,
hasn't watched Breaking Bad?
It's when Gus goes to visit Hector in the old people's home.
That's all you have to say. Don't say no more.
I won't say any more.
They play that song?
That's the song. That's the song. And you watch it and you go, I just watched it by accident. I was watching it through Breaking Bad. I was like, holy shit! It's Dark. It's the main theme tune from Dark.
Because they can sort of do it, then show a younger Hector from Better Call Saul on a split screen, and a younger Gus.
But the music, cinematography, it's the first, like I say, it's the first German show.
Oh, by the way, By the way, I have to say, Mercurial, that Marta and Jonas were a perfect match.
You've got two people that really they like each other, they love each other. Then they find out after the event that they're actually kind of brother sister type thing, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So then they know it's wrong,
It's perfect.
but no, you can't do that. No, can't say that. But yeah, like, I mean, if you don't know, if you find out that due to time travel, I mean, like, it's such a convoluted.
Somebody posted a TikTok on Reddit the other day of I think it was a brother and sister that they got married and had two children, and they look like the wife looks like the husband, like with a wig on, and they found out that they were brother and sister, and the parents never told them, and everyone's like
Wow.
scouring. It's a mystery of how it happened because they didn't know, and you're like, wow, I really get along with this person. You like macaroni and cheese too?
Yeah.
That's my favorite.
That's did you notice as well? There was a bloke in it whose only action was to have sex with the ginger girl who kept taking her top off. That's all he did in it. He had tattoos, and all he did through the entire program, while the world is burning around him, just kept having sex. See, I wanted to be that guy,
Did you just call her the ginger girl?
the ginger girl with the tits. I think she was my favourite one.
Was there a ginger girl without the tits to this? Did you have to differentiate?
You must know. Do you not see like my descriptions? You know exactly, Bill. You know exactly who I'm talking about.
She's no Martha. It's beautiful. Just put that. Because forever, goodbye.
Ve- Very, very confusing show. Very good.
But I loved it. And I
Very,
think
very good.
if you're in it to win it, and if you're watching it episode to episode, I thought it was good. And even though it was
Yeah.
convoluted, they had a plan. They executed the plan. You can sit for most of this stuff and connect the dots, and it works. Um, and I think I'm glad that there's shows like this that take chances. And
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about because they have a new show out, or they had a new show out called 1899 that has just been canceled.
Yes.
And I think the problem with that, and I liked 1899. I didn't love it, but I liked it, and I was intrigued to see where it would go. And I think it was also plotted out to be 3 seasons. And I think the problem with that is I think streaming services are starting to become like cable television. And what I really liked about streaming services is you see a lot of like the Marvel movies, which are fine. I've watched them all, but they're made to be one size fits all. They're made that your grandmother, your nephew, your niece, everybody can like it, and it's made for mass appeal. And what
Yeah.
streaming services, one of the things I liked about them is they were made so you could be niche a little. You could have a niche a little bit. You could have a little show that is kind of weird, but you like it. Like I love sci-fi, so it just kind of I really am into that. But it doesn't have to. Your grandmother doesn't have to love the show. There's a place for it, and I feel like we're moving now where no everything. And as much as I like Stranger Things, that's a show your grandmother. It's made for everybody, and that's fine. I enjoy it, but there
Yeah.
needs to be places for shows to kind of go in weird places
think.
and be allowed to do that. And I feel like we're losing that now.
Do you want to see a T-shirt I got for Christmas?
Not really. No, I'm just kidding because I saw you. Got it. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Nice.
Come on. Is that relevant or is that relevant?
Very relevant.
Right back to the beginning of the episode where we talked about Dead or Alive song. You spin me right round.
Did you feel satisfied at the end?
Yeah, I thought the ending of Dark was as good as you could hope for. Given how ridiculous it got towards the end.
Yeah.
I quite liked it. The bit that I've been mocking where scientists invents time machine to go back in time to save Sun, creates alternate universes, which happens for practically infinity amount of time until someone breaks the loop, and they go back and save his son, and then his son comes home and he never invents a time machine. And he never knows he did any of it, and you had an infinity of things.
But because he didn't know, the real plot to me is guy loses his son and heartbreak, invents a time machine, saves his son's life.
through
Yeah.
no action of his own other than inventing the time machine. He creates an infinity of people.
Whoa! This man conquered time and space.
But he
and you
didn't, because
just
it didn't work. He didn't he just press a button and it went
didn't work.
ka-junk. And he was like, oh.
He didn't know it. Yeah, he didn't know it.
He didn't
worked,
realise
but
he just created two split universes. He just went like this. Wait, you went ka-junk. Oh,
if Albert Einstein created the theory of relativity at night, and he said, "I'm not sure if this is going to work," and died in his sleep, would you say he's a chump? Because
hang on, are you quite say that again? Say that again. We'll see if these are in any way similar. Albert Einstein creates a theory of relativity.
yeah, but then he thinks that he at night, and he goes, "I'm not sure this works, but I'll think about it more in the morning." Dies in his sleep. Is he a chump?
I don't know if they're similar at all.
They're similar. You're
I
saying
don't think they're similar.
because the guy who created the time machine thought it didn't work.
Well, it didn't, because if you think about it, in his timeline, he does go on. That timeline, it never worked.
It worked in a
But
way
in
that
another
you-
timeline, it did. No,
It
it
worked
never
in a-
worked. It never worked. But an infinity, because they talk about infinity.
No. Let me ask you this: is his son alive? Yes. Then it worked.
Because all that happened.
Whoa!
No.
Why did he, wait, no. Let me finish. Why did he create the time machine? Just answer that simply.
Why did the scientist cross the road?
Don't answer my questions with questions. Why did he create the time machine? He
Bill.
created the time machine to save his son's life.
Bill,
His son was saved.
I'm going to write a new synopsis for Dark and stick it and submit it to Netflix, and it goes like this.
Scientist has argument with son. Son storms out and then returns home.
That's all that happened.
But that's not all.
Nothing else
all-
happened.
Look,
No one. Some people didn't even exist. Some people never. Ulrich, my favourite person in it, never existed. What I really wanted to get in there was the Dead or Alive bit, because it was like the first scene. You spinning right round, the idea of the cycle, and the band being called Dead or Alive, and then the very last episode, it's like second to last episode. They don't just hint at Schrodinger's cat. They actually have like an Open University piece on the TV. Right? Okay. The bits on the TV with the scientist talking about science to like a schools type program, was that the scientist? Was that the clockmaker?
He wrote a book, though, didn't he? The scientist guy?
Yeah, but he didn't, did he? Because they brought the book back and gave it to him. They said, you wrote this, and they handed it to him, and he went, oh, thanks.
It's a paradox.
I know, so he never wrote it. So who wrote it? Who wrote it? Remember that story? There's a famous story where someone, through time travel and through gender things, there's a story that by the end,
Where is this going?
he does time travel, and by the end, he's his own father, son, grandfather, everything. He goes, I'll put the name on the screen if I can remember what it is. But he time travels. He goes back in time and has sex with himself and all this sort of stuff. No,
He has sex with
should
himself?
I get my coat? It's a.
Are you making this up?
No. It's a story, and by the end, because he also becomes a woman, he
If I
becomes.
could have sex with myself, I'd never leave the house.
He also gender changes to a woman and goes back in time, has sex with himself. The baby is him. So he's his own mother and father. I'm pretty sure.
What?
Anyway, yeah. Oh well, I think the people who wrote Dark definitely read that book. It might be because I'm really ill and drinking beer and Moretti.
He changed genders and then went back in time and had sex with himself. But why did he have to go back in time if he changed genders?
He
Couldn't
went.
he just have sex with himself? Is that when he's?
He
Oh, I get it.
he.
So like he changed his sex and then went back to sleep with himself as a guy?
Yeah, but time travel's tricky, isn't it? Should we just stick with the idea of going back in time and get you on stage and playing Chuck Berry songs? Is that more simple?
I think you have to make it that simple to, Well, no, Dark did it well,
I
but
tell you what, though, overall, isn't Back to the Future still like the perfect film?
I love Back to the
I love Back to the Future.
I haven't watched it probably in 20 years, so I might watch it now and go, oh. I like saying stuff like like people will say, hey, eating some beans. And I'll be like, I hear they're good for your heart. And like I heard it from a scientific journal, not from the song about farting.
Oh, I can't laugh. Oh. Oh. Over and
Out.